Hey everyone, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I got a great guest for you, Mr. Robert Kennedy the third. The third, I love that. Located at the website of robertkennedy3.me. And we're going to talk today about one of the most overlooked, I believe, revenue growth strategies on the planet, which is your communication and your storytelling and how you can, as a founder, how understanding your company's narrative help you as a founder move from being seen as a commodity today, but being viewed more as a trusted, valued ally. And all of this includes, closing close rates, improving upon each stage and step of the customer journey, supporting, say, your premium pricing and buyer trust. All of these things will increase your company's value for a potential exit, or if you just want to hold the money for high profit compared to what you're doing today. Robert, welcome to the call, sir. It's a pleasure having you here today.
Doug, it's amazing to be here, my friend.
Well,
thanks for having me.
I was actually very much looking forward to our conversation because storytelling and communication is at the heart of what I preach all the time to people. And it's one of those things that a story can get you in a really good place or a story can get you in trouble. That's what I found out. But I'd like to start out first. Like a lot of people listening might go, well, come on. Storytelling is just a soft skill, right? It's like, we don't need a soft skill. Like, how does that improve revenue? I'd like to bounce it back to you. How does it turn into a financial tool?
Well, revenue happens because of a decision that somebody made.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to convince or influence a customer to make a decision to buy your process, your product, your program. You've got to figure out how to do that. And a lot of times we think that those decisions are strictly logic or numbers based. And the truth is, they are not strictly logic or numbers based. If you have two vehicles, you walk into a car dealership and there are two vehicles on the floor, and the salesperson says, this one is 400 horsepower. The inside has this luxury interior. This is the package. And here's another one. It's identical to it. Where do you make your decision? Because both of them are the same thing. They have the same numbers. You make a decision based on the emotion. He says the only thing that's different is this one's red and the other one's electric blue. And so now you got this feeling inside of it. Which one makes you feel better? Oh my gosh, I have a feeling, an emotion around electric blue. And so I choose that one, right? And it's not simply the data, it's the feeling of it. And so that's what storytelling does. Storytelling taps into the emotion and the feeling that causes connection, and that connection helps to create trust.
Could we say that connection is our own internal story, that we actually determine that, in this case, the blue color represents X to what I'm feeling. So therefore, and that feels good. So I move toward that. Is that fair?
Yep. That's fair. And it's both. It's not just the internal. That's the job of the story, to find the internal feeling of the customer that connects with the story or the feeling that the business is trying to express. And so that's where the connection comes in. I'm trying to help your brain. Here's how brains work. Brains don't like open loops.
Yeah.
Brains like closed loops, and they like to create and connect to patterns. And so anytime I share a story, your brain or the other person's brain is looking for a connection. They're looking for, have I had that experience? Do I want that experience? Do I not like that experience? Is that an experience that I aspire to? And it's looking to close that loop. So the more that I can do that in business, the better.
Do brains like to close loops for certainty? Like what is the purpose of the brain closing the loop?
Yeah, so certainty is one of those, and being able to predict or recognize or comfort. Yeah, we like to be in a space where we recognize a pattern, right? And if we think about when we binge watch TV shows, right? Now, back in the day, you had to wait a week, or you had to wait. They got to the end of the season and you had to wait
Oh yeah, I
3
remember
months
those
before
days.
the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
thing happened, right? Right. So, but producers leverage that because they're saying, okay, we want to get to the end of the story. We like completeness. We want to know what's next or what's going to happen. And if you think about business as well, when a customer purchases something from you, typically their brain is asking what next. They come to a web session or podcast that you have. Their brain is asking what next. And so if we don't give the what next, they leave unsatisfied, and so they go to something else typically, which is why we talk about calls to action.
Mm.
Right. And so that call to action at the end of an episode: share this, click this, subscribe to this, go to this website. If you're interested in such and such, look at this. That's that next thing. So because the brain is continuing or looking to close that loop. And so you're helping along with that process.
Yeah, this makes so much sense. And this is how communications folks increases close rates. Leading higher close rates will increase your margins because your marketing spend's far more effective at that point, for number one.
Yep.
And frankly, you can extend the buying relationship through another relationship, cross-sell, upsell, all kinds of things you can do. Referrals that come out of that, right? Increased buying frequency. And all of these are revenue growth strategies, but they're also profit growth strategies. And you were saying, the reason I asked on the close side of it is because I know that in every sale there's a business return on investment or personal return on investment that the person is actually weighing in their heads. And we need to move them out of fear toward confidence in that decision on both sides of that business ROI and the personal ROI. And the closing of the loop gives us certainty that we made this decision that now says this is right for me. And that's the whole key in selling, folks, is moving it from point A to point B. Like you said, if you leave it open, then there's questions, and people want to fill in those blanks because they want to feel certain, I believe, on their ability to make that decision in confidence. Otherwise, buyer's remorse sets in, undo the sale later on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How does...
And another...
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Another example of that is not so much certainty. I think sometimes we're trying to make sure that people are certain, but the other way to look at that is the mind is weighing cost benefit, right? How much is this going to cost me? What is the sacrifice that I'm going to make? And what is the benefit of that? And does the benefit outweigh the cost, or does it at least equal the cost? If the benefit is less than the cost, or I'm going to spend this much and I'm going to not get this much benefit or less benefit, I'm probably not going to make that sale. Right? But if the benefit is in my mind at least equal or greater, then I'm going to look to purchase that. How do I know that benefit is going to be equal or greater? Well, that's different for everybody. That depends on the experience that they want or have had previous, that allows them to create a nostalgia or a picture or a video in their brain about how that benefit will make them look, feel, or appear to other people.
And that benefit, I'm open to, nope, that's not this, Doug, but that benefit in their mind contributes to what they deem and perceive as value to them.
Correct.
And therefore, the more that we can position our conversation to delivering that value and closing that loop, the higher their confidence in that ability for them to make that decision will be.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yep. So, and brands leverage this all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I go into a store and there is a white polo shirt, and that polo shirt is large. It's cotton. It looks really nice. Okay. But I go into another store, it just happens to be owned by Ralph Lauren or the company. And there's a little dude that's riding on a horse on the top right of it. Okay. It's the same white shirt. It's the same cotton shirt, right? The only difference is that little logo. What's the benefit there? I'm willing to pay $19.99 for one, but the other one is $59.99. And the only difference is the little guy that's there. What's the benefit? Oh, here's the benefit. It's when you walk in public, somebody that you're attracted to is like, oh my gosh, you got a polo shirt or you got this thing. Now you've got a different perception, or the reputation of they can afford a polo shirt. And so now the perception of you is different. And that's the benefit in that space.
So can I define, I want to take this to something that most people can relate to. They want something done at their home, and somebody from the trades industry comes in. Let's say they're going to be evaluating, I don't know, plumbing or whatever, right? And the story is not just what we're telling people. The story is actually how we're representing ourselves as well. So in the case of the polo shirt, people who recognize that brand or recognize that, elevate that person who's wearing that shirt already. There is a story there that person has in their head. So if somebody's kind of walking into a home and they're well-groomed, well-dressed, et cetera, or representative of what that person would value in a person coming into their home from the trades industry versus somebody walking in with, ripped up boots and muddy shirts and all of this other stuff. Can we relate storytelling to that type of scenario as well?
Absolutely, because we make micro judgments all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We see somebody, we see a scenario, and we make micro judgments. And the judgments are not just about good versus bad. The judgments are about what we have been grown up seeing or what experiences we've had prior. Because if we go back to the brain closing loops thing, right? The brain is like this radar. I see something, the brain is looking for how I can connect that to a prior experience. Can I connect it to something that I already know? If I see somebody in uniform, that signals trust in some ways because I've been grown up from the time that I was a child saying, hey, police are supposed to protect you. Somebody in uniform, the fire people protect you. A doctor, a nurse, they're wearing uniforms. They protect you, right? And so if I see somebody now in a uniform, trigger, boom, okay, there's a little bit more protection and quality and trust embedded inside of that because of the stories that I've already been told. If I see somebody that is outside of that, wait a minute, they're not wearing that. They don't look that way. So therefore, they must not be capable enough and we have no idea about their competency yet.
Right. But we make that judgment, right? We make that judgment based on the story, that internal story we're selling ourselves about. Because you have people, like I've had people come into my home before from the trades industry. Some of them will just walk right through. Some of them though will put like different booties on, right? They'll put the things so they won't nick up your floor or drag dirt through your house. They have a uniform that has a logo on the uniform. They're walking through and they look very professional. It's almost like you said, like a doctor coming in, imagine if your doctor came in a muscle shirt or something like that, right? You'd be like, we're not used to that.
Like, wait a minute. One of these things is not like the other.
Exactly. So in somebody coming through to work on your air conditioning or your heating or you name it, or a painter, right? Walking through. I've had painters walk through my home before and they're covered in paint all over their body and face. And it's like, they don't think to like clean up because it's not they don't understand the story that is being represented when they come in there. Because what I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, if they get paint all over them, what's going to happen to my furniture? What's going to happen to my wife's valuables that are hanging on the wall, let's say, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So this story idea, folks, of what we're talking about, what Robert's bringing forth, this is absolutely a growth strategy for you, for your profit and your revenue, because you go to these places, let's say we'll keep with the trades thing, We go to these places, we pay for the lead most of the time.
Yeah.
And so if you're closing 4 out of 10 today, but you could close 6 out of 10 today, think about the amount of money that you're now getting in your company, but the money that you haven't, money out is not as high as it was because you're monetizing everything going through. I
Yeah.
wanted to go, you hit on something. How do we learn, right? And I remember when I was little, my mom, my dad, they would read stories to me, and Make Way for Ducklings was one of the ones that I would um, be read to as a Boston book about ducks walking through the park and everything. I read those to my children as well, and so stories tend to shape our view of the world from a very young age.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It does. It does.
And we tend to pass those stories on from generation to generation to generation.
Hmm.
So stories are a powerful communication mechanism. We all intellectually get it, but a company's narrative actually is a story, is it not?
Yes. Yes, yes. So there's several of those. There is what we call the origin story
Mm-hmm.
of a company, and then you can have the brand or strategic story. So the origin story is why you started in the first place. Where did this company come from? And that story can do a couple of things. It can either align with a belief that somebody already has, or it can influence a belief that somebody or that somebody didn't have previously. So, for example, if I said to you, if you and I wore glasses,
Yeah.
and we said, I have a company that sells glasses, and I say, hey, we sell glasses and we don't make it expensive to do that. You're saying, okay, good. I pay less for glasses. But there's a company called Warby Parker.
Yeah.
They are an eyewear company, if you've never heard of them, but they're pretty famous. On their website, in their About section, they have a story that says a bunch of kids, college kids, went camping, and one of the college kids wore glasses. They went on a hike. His glasses fell off and they broke. Somebody stepped on it, hit a rock, something of that nature. Spent the rest of the weekend not being able to see clearly. Went back to college and had to spend the rest of the semester squinting because they couldn't afford to buy the glasses. And so at that moment, the idea came, listen, people should not have to suffer to see because they can't afford glasses. And so that's how the company Warby Parker was born. So what is inside of that? Okay, the company on their About page is saying, oh my gosh, the whole thing about squinting. If you've ever been in the sun, even if you don't wear glasses, if you've ever been in the sun, somebody's trying to take a picture of you and the sun is in your eyes and you've squinted and you know how uncomfortable that is. That is a feeling that you can now identify with and saying, yeah, my God, imagine having to squint in a class in a normal setting for an entire semester simply because somebody told you that something that you needed was out of your price range. Right? So the company is now leading into a belief or a feeling or an emotion because of the story. And if you ever have to go to purchase glasses at some, you're now, you've got Warby Parker on the brain because you've got that
Right.
story
Right.
and that feeling.
Yeah, and so many people in their conversations, in their demonstrations, in their discovery process, in their handling of objections, and all of these
Yeah,
things that happen naturally during a conversation, a sales process, they're
yeah.
not using stories to bail themselves out of it. Right?
Hmm.
And I find this like a case study, folks, is a story.
Yep,
Right. And so
absolutely.
that's what it is. It's a story. It's telling you what was like before, what was like during, and what was like after. And the result is this is a positive thing. And again, go back to how we learned. We learned from stories. back before there were, back before there was television, right? There was
Yeah.
radio. Well, there were mystery shows on radio. There were uh, and they were all stories. Everything was a
Hmm.
story, and people would then talk about the radio. Did you hear about this radio XYZ program? And they would share this stuff in contrast and compare notes through stories. But for
Yeah.
some reason, we don't use this as a growth strategy, a lot of us naturally. And storytelling directly affects even premium pricing.
Yep.
Do you have an example of how premium pricing can be unfolded with storytelling? Because
So
I have a kind of a lead in. We went to Harrods
yeah,
in London.
go ahead.
And folks, those of you who have never been to Harrods, if you ever get a chance, it's worth the walk in. Well, you see a dress
Mhm.
that's $19,000, where you look and go, Macy's has a similar dress for 250. Like, why is this
Yeah.
$19,000? And then you see somebody come out of the dressing room wearing that dress and going, I'll take this, I'll take that.
Yep.
So the story around this is, for these folks buying this is a story that represents their ability to buy that. There's different types of narratives around that. So I'm curious, Robert, how to get, because you don't walk into Harrods and buy something for $1. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So how does premium pricing and storytelling sort of interlace?
So it's almost as if when we hear higher price, we automatically assume higher quality.
Yeah.
Right? That's the story that's been told to us. I shared with you the Polo versus the Walmart shirt.
Yeah.
That are, it's the same shirt. It's just the logo. I mean, in business, we have so many examples of this, and sometimes we have the example within the same brand. So for those people that don't know, Toyota is the same company as Lexus.
Yes.
Right? Lexus is the higher priced vehicle, but is essentially the same car with a few differences. The engines of like the Camry is the same as one of the higher level Lexuses. The differences, they may have put a little bit of a different wine colored or marble looking dashboard on one. But essentially Toyota was saying, hey, we want to charge more for this. And so the name Lexus actually comes from luxury export to the US. Right?
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. Luxury export. So so they said, you know what, let's put a couple of different things in this. Let's put a new name on it, and we'll charge $20,000 more for these vehicles. Is it costing them much more to make this vehicle? No, not a whole heck of a lot more. The most of it's cosmetic stuff that they've changed a couple of things. So, premium pricing and making something look a certain way automatically creates a different experience or tells a different story for people based on what we've already seen on TV or in our lives that luxury looks like. I'm sure you've had this experience, Doug, where you've seen something in pictures or you've seen something on TV and you're like, oh my gosh, this seems great. You've seen celebrities there taking pictures, and then you go to the actual place.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute. This is it? This is, but our companies have gotten adept, marketers have gotten adept at telling you a story around something and up-leveling the price. Right. Another quick one. If you go to this website called significantobjects.com, These two guys decided that they were going to go to some yard sales and buy a bunch of just nondescript objects, knickknacks, whatever, horse heads, all sorts of crazy stuff. They spent about $80 buying stuff from these yard sales. Then they went to a bunch of their friends who were journalists and said, hey, can you write me a story about each of these objects? They got the stories and they put the objects on eBay. They made more than $8,000
$80
from these objects because of the stories that were associated with them. And you look at some of the objects on the website and you're like, geez, who would use that? What is that even used for? But there was an experience that was attached to it. And so the value of it shifted.
And folks, that's the key in telling stories, to get that experience to transfer from point A to point B. Now, if you're selling plumbing, you can talk about, like, I had a guy come into one of my buildings that we had, and he looked and he said, there's some corrosion here, right? And I said, yeah. And I looked and it's like green, streaking down the pipe. And he's like, let me tell you a couple of stories about people who delayed in fixing this. And then it popped and, flooded their basement and this and that and this. And when he got done with the story, Robert, I was just like, I was already sold on the story, like when he was telling the story. But then he's like, well, I said, well, how much to fix that? And he gave me the price. I'm like, please fix it. Right. Because my emotion was like, I don't want to be on a business trip, have that thing pop. And then, 3 days later, I hear about my basement has been flooded out and, it's costing me all this time, energy, money, all that stuff. Another thing to the Lexus thing, I remember it clearly. I used to drive a Toyota Camry, and my brother, David, used to drive a Lexus. And one day he's looking at the Camry and he is looking at it like kind of sideways. And I'm like, what's up? He goes, do you know the chassis and the motor in your car is the same exact one in my Lexus? And I said, yes. And he goes, the radio components look very similar too. I said, oh, that's interesting. And he goes, even the kind of the detail on the seating, because I had the upgraded, Camry.
Yeah.
He's like, it's so like almost identical. And I said, no, David, it's not identical. He said, well, yeah, it is. Look. I said, no, David, it's not. He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, you paid $30,000 more than I did to get you from point A to B in almost an identical car. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Now, folks, that's a story. Do you understand? Like you can use the story now to make a point in the conversation. And so if I was selling Toyota and others were selling, and I didn't sell Lexus within the Toyota brand, I would be using that story with my people to make a point if they were concerned about price.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how stories affect company margins, revenue. And when you affect the company revenue and margins for the positive, you now affect the valuation and exit value of your company.
Yeah.
So, Robert, how do people get a hold of you? And they want to learn now more about you, what they can do with stories, and so on and so on, right? So how do they get a hold of you, sir?
The easiest way, robertkennedy3.com is my speaker website. You can get in touch with me there. You mentioned robertkennedy3.me at the beginning of the show. And if you go there, you can connect with me on social media. LinkedIn is where I hang out a lot. So yeah, easy to reach me, easy to find me there. We've got an event coming up called the Story Vault Remix shortly. So if people go to storyvaultremix.com, they can find out a little bit more about that.
That was Story Vault Remix.
Remix.
Okay.
Yep.
And Robert Kennedy 3, is it the number 3? Okay.
Alphanumeric. Yep.
Okay. Folks, check it out. Highly recommend it. And you can use, here's the cool part. Stories don't cost you a lot.
No, it doesn't.
It's not like you have to go get some PPC, and pay Google a ton of money, right?
Yeah.
The stories are one of your most leveraged assets and most underutilized asset I've ever experienced
Yeah.
in conversations and in conversational selling. Um, Robert, last question: how did you
Yeah.
come up with like stories and storytelling and this as a business? Because a lot of times people are like, how do they get into that business, right?
I don't know that there was a day that I just said, "Hey, let me do this." It's come over time. Some of it may have been, I'm a PK, preacher's kid. And so one of the I've always been around somebody that is sharing stories in order to make a point. As my dad from the pulpit always talked about different Bible stories or how Jesus used parables. Those are some things that are ingrained into me. So if we talk about that spiritual aspect for a second, Jesus could have said some direct points, but in order to get people to a space of understanding, he told a parable, a story to open up the pathway.
Yep.
So now I can make the point. And the same is true for us. We want to make a point. We want to create influence. We want to lead people from one space to another, help them with the journey by creating an experience that takes them from one space to the other.
Awesome. And folks, if you didn't catch the nuance of this, we're talking about a reference in the Bible he was talking about. That's very old.
Yeah.
That's been around for a
It
long
is.
time. Right? So stories have been around for a long, long, long time. And,
Yeah.
well, Robert, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate you being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. And I think a lot of people are really thinking now. They're thinking differently. And that's what we do here. And folks, now, last point, don't just think, implement and act.
I love it.
All right, Robert, until next time, thank you for being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast.
My pleasure.
All right, so storytelling. The question is, do you have it actively in your company or passively? Because storytelling absolutely affects your valuation, your exit. It affects your margins. It affects how much you sell. It affects the process in your company because people remember these things. And so the question is, what process do you have on and around storytelling? Is it active or is it passive? Passive is, hey, you kind of remember to tell a story whenever. Active is you actually have a vault of stories and you can pull them out per situation so that you're covered. It's really about scripting your stories ahead of time and then knowing where to lay them in on the process of the client journey. So please, 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 please give this high consideration and move it forward in your business. It will help you in all kinds of ways. Speaking of help, if you want to increase your revenue, your profit, you want to increase the process in your company, we will help you do that here. Reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. That is the email, doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. If you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, it's Doug Brown 123. If you want to call, area code 832-549-4836. That is my cell phone number. Please no spam text. And hit me up and we'll have that conversation. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast saying, to your success.